Hello everyone, this is the lesson 4 review video, and last time, the last video, someone said that my voice was out of sync with my mouse movements or my typing and stuff. If that's the case, please contact me on Edmodo and tell me, and then I'll try something different this time. Um, Hopefully it won't be a problem. Anyway, today we're going to learn we're going to review what I taught in class, which was how to use other people's code. And in order to understand how to use other people's code, we actually need to understand the concept of methods and, by extension, classes and some of object-oriented programming. And object-oriented programming um, is extremely important, and it is also extremely difficult to comprehend the very first time you see it, or hear about it, and also times after that as well. Um, I'm going to try and make it as simple as I can, and so that you can understand it. So let's start with methods, right? Here's an example with math.pow, and I'll explain this now. So we've seen math things. We can do a plus b here. Int a equals 2, int b equals 4. System.out.println a plus b, that's going to print out 6. But what if we wanted 2 to the 4th, right? We don't know how to do that in Java because 2 caret 4 does not work. It doesn't recognize that. So we use this math.pow method and .pow parentheses a comma b for 2 to the 4. And let's run this and see what happens. We get 6 and 16. So a plus b, 2 plus 4 is 6, and then 2 to the 4th is 16. That's exactly what we expected. So how does the math.pow method work? Well, a method is like a function in math. So everybody remember the math test? And in the math test, we saw stuff like f of x equals 2x plus 3. Excuse my handwriting, I'm using my finger, not a stylus, so it's a little bit difficult. Um, in this one, we're giving this f of x is a function, and we're giving it an x, which is the argument. Uh, and so we're giving it an x, and it's going to plug x into whatever this is, and then that's going to pop something out. In this case, if we gave it a 3, it'd be 2 times 3, which would be 6, plus 3 is 9, and it'd give us a 9. So the way you write this is f of 3 equals 9. But that's in math. Let's talk about methods. It's exactly the same. We have math.pow a comma b. So the a and the b are inside the parentheses. And actually, let's do math.absolute value and math.abs of -4. That way we only have one thing. So in this case, we had f of x. In this one, we have math.abs of -4. Or we could put an x in here. So instead of f of 3, we have that abs of -4. We have one thing that we put into it in each case, and one thing that we get out. In this case, we get out a 9. In this case, well, what's the absolute value of -4? That's just 4, so it's going to give us a 4. In this one, we have 2 arguments, a and b, and it's going to return a raised to the b power. So 2 to the 4th power is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which is 16. And let's do a bit of terminology here. Math.pow is a method. The stuff inside the parentheses are the arguments. Arguments. Did I spell that right? Yes, it did. Arguments. And the math.pow is a method. And the method is just like the function there, the function f of x. Now, you're probably wondering, okay, so I understand math.pow, I understand math.absolute value. How the heck did I know these exist, and how do I know how to use them? For example, what if in math.pow it was b to the a instead of a to the b? Well, the answer is documentation. So the people that write these things, these methods for us, document how to use them, and that can be found on the internet. So welcome to docs.oracle.com/java se/7/docs/API. API is assisted programming interface or something like that. And this is the people that make Java and have all these classes. We'll explain classes in a little bit. Tell you how to use them. So this is, you go down until you find the math class. It's alphabetical. I've already found it. And in your math class, we have blah, 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 method summary. So these are all the things that math can do for you. Absolute value returns the absolute value of a double value, or if you gave it an integer, like we did, -4, returns the absolute value of an integer value. Let's go down to POW. This should also be alphabetical. Ooh, POW returns the value of the first argument raised to the power of the second argument. So what's the first argument? It's going to be A. Second argument is going to be B. Now, that corresponds to our A and B, but I could have called this X and Y, and it would have been exactly the same. So the idea is it takes the, it returns the first argument raised to the power of the second argument, and that is online. So you learn about how to use methods and what methods exist through one experience. As you program more, you get more experience. And oh yeah, and if you want more information on these, you go and you find POW. You can click on it and it'll take you to this. And then I guess these are all like special cases and stuff that we don't really care about. But here, very easy. Parameters. Well, in this case, arguments, and then the value a to the b. That's what it returns. So as I was saying earlier, you learn about all these methods in classes as you program, and you're shown them, like I'm showing them to you now. Or if you Google, if you're having a problem and you're like, oh, how do you do this? You can Google it, and if there's something in existence, it'll probably show up. Or you can search the documentation. All right. Next, let's talk about scanner. So scanner is something that's going to be very useful to us, and it's going to tie into our discussion of objects and classes and all that. But it might not seem like that at first. So what is scanner? Scanner is something that allows us to get user input. What does this mean? This means that so far we've been able to print stuff out using system.out.print, or there should be print line. That'll be easier. Print line. But we haven't been able to actually print stuff in the, or not print stuff, but input stuff, tell the computer stuff. You'll see what I mean when we run the program. So the first thing, so we use a scanner to do this. So the first thing we need to do is import the scanner. What does this mean? Well, scanner is code that's been written. It's over here in the documentation. But all our programs don't automatically load scanner, just like they don't automatically load all of these other classes, because then they take forever to load, and we wouldn't be using 99% of those. So in order to get it to load the class, we import it. So the import, pay attention to where this import goes. It goes between the package, but before the class. So and then here's your main down here, and then here's the curly brackets where all the stuff goes. So this is the first thing that you write that does not go between the curly brackets of main. So it's going to be import java.util.S scanner semicolon. And so Java is Java. Util, I believe, stands for utilities, and it's scanner. Next, in main, now that scanner, now that our program can access the scanner code, we're going to create one. So scanner input equals new scanner and then system.in. This is complicated to understand why we have to do this at first. So I'm going to try and take us through it. I imagine a scanner is just like another variable. So we have integers, we have booleans, we have doubles, we have strings, and now we have scanners. So when we say int I equals, well here, int A equals 2. So what type is it? It's of type integer. What are we calling it? A. So what type is it? It's of type scanner. What are we calling it? Input. Now because A is an integer and it's really easy to define, we just say equals 2. But with scanner, because scanner is more complicated and scanner is actually a class, and I'll talk about classes in a second, we have to say equals new scanner. And so equals new scanner system.in. And what's the system.in? The system.in is just something that needs to be there in order for the scanner to work properly in the way that we're using it. It would get complicated if we went into what exactly why. So I'm gonna just put it in there in between the parentheses. But the structure is the same. The structure is this structure where you have what is it? What's your name of it? It equals a new and then whatever it is with the parentheses, and then you put whatever needs to be put inside the parentheses, in this case system.in. Sometimes you don't need anything to be put inside. That's when that's how you create something of greater complexity. So all these things, or the things that we'll be using, need to be declared in that way. Let's back up a bit and see what is a class. Let me think for a second about how to best explain this. I'm going to pause the video so you guys don't have to waste your time. Okay. Think of a class as a group or a category. So let's go back to our math.pow here. Oh, I gotta do that. In this, math is the class. It's the math class, as we can see. This is the math. This is the math class, and math is the category which has a lot of methods. So within math, there are a lot of methods, including .pow or .abs, .absolute value. And all these are related to math. So you can think of a class, for now at least, as we learn more, we'll get a more sophisticated understanding. But think of classes for now as just categories. And this doesn't work, this category analogy or this category explanation doesn't work with scanner all that well. So I'm going to, when I explain object-oriented, I'll use a different example. But let's finish up working with scanner just so you guys know how to use it, because regardless if you understand the object-oriented part behind it, why it works, you need to know how to use it, and then we'll work on the object-oriented part as we go through the next couple weeks, because this isn't something you just learn in 1 week. So anyway, we've made a scanner, and it's called input. And remember how math, all these things have methods. There are a lot of methods in math. There are a lot of methods in the scanner as well. So we're going to see one up here, next int. So first of all, whenever you're going to ask the user to input something, you need to tell them that you're going to ask them to input something. Otherwise, they have no idea what's going on. The program's waiting for them to input something, but they don't know that. And because the program didn't tell them to, they're going to say, well, wait, this program doesn't do anything. It's just not doing anything. It's like it's waiting for something. So the first thing we do is we say, please input an integer. So the user knows, oh, okay, I get to input an integer. And next we say int I equals input.nextInt. So let's take out the int I equals for now, and let's look at input.nextInt. Input is our scanner, right? Scanner input. Input's our scanner. And what this is called, just keep this in mind, this is an object. And what is an object? The definition of an object is an instance of a class. That probably makes no sense. Don't worry. I just was giving you the formal definition. For our purposes, for now, think of an object as basically a complicated variable, right? So A is a variable, and it's simple. It has the value 2, right? Input is an object, and it's of type scanner, and it's complicated because it can do a lot of things. For instance, it can use all these methods. So nextInt, well, let's hazard a guess as to what nextInt does. NextInt is a method, and you'll notice that it's the same kind of thing as math.pow a b, and that's going to give me an error because this is before a and b, but whatever. Except it has nothing in the parentheses. This is okay because um, remember when we said functions, you give them something and they put something out? Well, sometimes you don't have to give them anything. You could say g of whatever. Actually, you probably couldn't say this in math, but in programming, this is kind of how it works. Equals 5. And so whenever you said g, it's going to give you a 5. That might not have made sense. When we say math.pow, we have to give it stuff because, for instance, say I told you to add 2 numbers, and you know, say you were a calculator, and one of your methods was add. So I said, okay, add 2 numbers, and you look at me like, well, what 2 numbers? You need to tell me more. So I need to give you 2 numbers to add. That's what math.pow is doing. We're giving it a and b to take the power, you know, a to the b. With nextInt, we don't need to give it anything because what are we asking it to do? We're asking it to read the next integer that the user inputs, and that we can figure that out if we didn't know by looking in Scanner and looking for nextInt. Oop, says scans the next token of input as an integer, and that's a little bit complicated language, but whatever. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. It scans the next token of input, so it scans the next thing inputted as an integer, and what does it return? The integer scanned from the input. So it's going to give us whatever integer the user inputs. And let's go back and add that into I equals, and so that integer that it scanned in is going to be stored in I, which is our variable of type integer here. So as you can see, we don't need to give it anything in the parentheses because nextInt is not adding 2 numbers, and it's not going to say which 2 numbers. It's just this is where a method acts more like a command rather than a function. So these are like functions where you know you give it stuff, you put something in, and you take something, and it gives you something else out based on whatever its function is. In this one, a method is more like a command where it's saying scan the next integer, scan the next token of input as an integer, and it does it. Hopefully that made sense. I'm sorry. Oh, this video is probably going to be very long by the time I'm done. But this is important, and you don't have to watch this all in one sitting. I might split this into. No, never mind. All right. So let's see this work, and then to make sure it works, we're going to print out what we had. Let's print out I. And let's get rid of these. All right, let's run. Give it a second. Okay, please input an integer. And now it's waiting for me. So let's give it an integer. How about 54? And then you say enter. And look, it output 54, just like we thought it would. So that is how a scanner works, and you can use input.nextInt. There's also another one you would use would be input dot so say you wanted a double, say dot next double. Now this isn't going to work because you said it's an int, but if you say double here instead and you make your variable double, it'll work perfectly. There's also next line, and next line is cool because that gives you the whole line as a string. So then we can say string I equals input.nextLine. And so let's say please input a string and run it, and I'll just demonstrate this, and then you guys will understand how scanner works, hopefully. Let's say the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog, and it outputs that string because what happened? It read in the string through the next line method. It stored it in I, and then we're printing out I. There we go. That's how scanner works, and you're going to have to use scanner if you do the optional homework, which I highly recommend. So yeah, work on the optional homework, especially since you have a break. Um, and now I'm going to prep the next part of the video. I'll just pause it. I know this is long. You don't have to watch it all at once. And that's going to talk more about classes and things. Okay, guys, I have just prepared this, and hopefully this will make um, uh, classes and objects a little easier to understand. So let's take a look at this. Um, this is the box class, and what does a box have? Well, it has length, a width, and a height. This is the constructor. We'll learn about those in another week. Not right now. And then this is a method inside the box class called getVolume. So here's my main. And in the main, I'm going to make a box just like I made a scanner. Now I don't have to import the box class up here because it is in the same package. It's in package shapes, right? So and the reason it is in package shapes is because I made this entire thing. So I can teach you guys how to make your own classes and methods and constructors and stuff, but that's way too advanced for right now. This is just to demonstrate what it is. So let's take a look. This follows our same format. We have the type or the class box, then we have the name of what it is. This is going to be called cube, and it is a new box. And inside the parentheses, we have numbers here. And what do these numbers correspond to? Well, in my little documentation, I don't have a site like this, but I can just tell you. The first one's going to be the length, the second one's going to be the width, and the third one is going to be the height. And you can look at that by looking in the constructor here. But as I said, that's too advanced, so don't really think about that if you don't get it. Then what can we do? Well, in the box we can call the getVolume method, and the getVolume method returns the volume based on the length, width, and height. So this is going to print out 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. Now, you might ask, what is the purpose of making a new object each time? Why can't you just say box 222 and then have that be your variable? Because now by making it so that we have cube, and in this case now we have boxy, we can make more than one box. So and although each box is of the same class, it's just like we can have more than one integer, right? Int a equals 4, int b equals 6. We can have more than one integer with different names, even though they're both of type integer. And the way we do that is by making different variables, a and b. We can have more than one box with different dimensions, just as these integers have different values, by naming them different things, even though they're both of type box. Now, we could even have boxes of the same dimensions. I could make boxy be 222 as well, and that's perfectly fine because just as if I could have A and B both equal 4. Um, this is an example of the cube and boxy are both objects, and they are both of the class box. That doesn't really make sense. It's a little bit hard to explain over a screencast like this. I'll try and do a better job in the next video and try and be at the next actual lesson, because I think I explained this better in person. Any questions, post them on Edmodo. I'll answer them as soon as I can. I think that's about it for today. Have a nice break.